with Shaun, all the violence was dismissed with a joke. I mean, for instance, when the chap was in the bath and he throws the electric fire in, I mean, that is, if you think of it, it's absolutely ghastly, but he says...
Shocking.
And the man is shot with a spear. I mean, you imagine a spear gun going into you, the mess it would make. But he says, well, I think he got the point. So that you never actually think of the violence.
That kind of one-line humor that we really initiated in there is all over. I mean, Arnold does it in his movies too, you know. It's become a kind of almost a trademark, and it's so accepted now that nobody thinks of where it started.
Well, he's certainly left with his tail between his legs.
I think that's one of the best stunts I've ever seen in any movie. That was B.J. Worth and Jake Lombard. Well, they were amazing. I mean, that was 15,000 foot hanging off the back of a plane. They were just brilliant. Brilliant.
This, again, was one of those major sequences which was spread probably over 5 weeks. And a segment at the time was done, and we had very stringent safety precautions. It was shot over the Mojave Desert. And we used to have a safety man who would, when BJ was fighting on the back, there was a great danger he would fall off, which he did on several occasions. And the standard procedure was the safety man, as soon as he saw BJ fall away, would dive after him, catch him up, as we did in Moonraker, and be prepared to pull his chute in case he was knocked unconscious during the fall. And in fact, on one occasion, BJ got very, very close for that happening to being knocked. He was knocked against the fuselage of the airplane with great turbulence, and fell off. And I think he was semi-conscious, and the safety man was right alongside him, within seconds, ready to deploy his chute for him.
The Bonds in the 90s has differed from the 60s because of the amount of expectation of the audience. We have other films to compete with now, and we have to make sure that we are more spectacular, more sensational, and sometimes more looking dangerous than they were in the early 60s. A man would drive a car fast or do a high fall, and it was really sensational. These days, the technology has to, and the expectation of the audience is such that we have to do more and more dangerous things.
If you think back to when Dr. No first came into being and look at the films that have been made since then, the Star Wars and Raiders of the Lost Ark and Superman, and all those pictures were made in England. then you can see where one has had to keep improving just to keep abreast and keep ahead of the times.
I'm an actor, and the people with me are movie makers, and no one wants to get killed. Nobody wants to break a leg. You know, we want to make movies, and the only way you can make movies is to stay alive. So you make sure that they're safe.
You could have had everything. Don't you want to know why?
So I doubled for Sanchez getting on fire. Timothy was sitting in front of me. I was gelled up and ready to go. I had 3 minutes of air because I had a full face mask and it was going to be a full burn. They're the most dangerous. You cannot see where you're going. Time and everything seems to alter. You're just totally lost in this roaring canyon of fire around you.
You have to be very careful with the timing of putting the rubber gel on him, because if you put it on too soon, the fumes from the rubber gel get into the clothing and it can start to burn on the inside rather than the outside. So there are a number of considerations to make.
We have certain signs that we have to show to each other that we are okay or that we are not okay. The heat is tremendous. I mean, it gets hotter. It doesn't, you don't just get hot immediately. It gets warmer and then it gets hot, and then you really start feeling it. You have no time to try to estimate. It's just really the pain threshold that you're coming to, that you want to be put out. At that point, you know that beyond that, you will start blistering, and that's what we don't want. That's when we have to lay out flat, and they know to put you out.
Half the world loved Sean Connery. Half the world loved Roger Moore. They might all combine together and hate me, which fortunately didn't happen. But I mean, it's a big concern. Taking over is difficult.
Waiter.
Don't bring him 57.
Sir?
Why do you persist in rescuing me, Mr. Bond?
It's becoming a habit, isn't it, Contessa Teresa?
Teresa was a saint. I'm known as Tracy.
Well, Tracy, next time play it safe and stand on 5.
People who want to stay alive play it safe.
Please stay alive. At least for tonight.
It's very difficult to take a little Australian boy, a big Australian boy, who'd just done advertising work and commercials, and give him this part. This was the part that many actors would have given their eye teeth for, as it were. So he had a tremendous amount of ego, really. And he thought of it, naturally enough, he thought of it as a great possibility. It was going to, do tremendous things for him. And perhaps it could have done, but I think it went a little to his head, I suppose, is what they say.
What was I, a high school dropout who had nothing? I couldn't even get a room in a decent hotel, even if I had the money. You had to be somebody, do you know what I mean? And I thought, well, this will at least give me a name or something. I had no fears whatsoever. In fact, I remember one of the statements I made. They said, Harry Saltzman asked me, he said, what's your body look like? And I said, better than Connery's. I mean, that was my attitude. Sorry, Sean, because that's probably not true. Who knows, But I started to take my clothes off, because I was so, up myself, as they say. I was very, very sure of myself. I had very little experience compared to what I have now, and it shows in my life. I mean, can see it in my eyes in lots of places. Some places I pull it off, but I don't want that camera hanging around there on me for a long time. In those days, and Peter was clever.